Hey guys, welcome back to the Writers Unblocked Artist Interview Inspiration Series. I'm your host, Writer, and I'm here. I am so honored today to have on the show Curtis Rivers. He's a career stuntman and now holistic life coach. Curtis, glad to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this chat.
Thank you. Now, you have a number of accolades to your credit. I mean, from films that you've done stunt work on, from James Bond, Thor, Captain America, Sherlock Holmes, Da Vinci Code, one of my favorite movies of all time, to shows like Game of Thrones, where you actually won a SAG award. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was a team effort. We won a Screen Actors Guild Award for the best stunt action in a TV series for a stunt ensemble. So it was a team effort. Very proud of that one.
Oh yeah, and that's an incredible accolade. And then also Vikings, and I believe currently you're on the Harry Potter series with HBO. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've signed an NDA, so I can't go into too much detail. Other than it's really exciting, and it's super cool to be back working on it.
When is it supposed to debut?
Oh, I think it's got about another year. We're filming for another kind of 3 or 4 months. Then it spends almost a year in post-production. So I think it will be late 2026, early 2027, I think.
Okay, great. Yeah, you spent most of your career in stunt work. You've doubled for people from Christopher Lee to Matthew McFadden. And I wonder if you could touch a little bit more on that, because I just finished watching Succession. What was it like doubling for him?
It's great. I mean, you meet all sorts of characters, and we work closely together.
Yeah.
And most of the actors appreciate your input. We become friends over the shoot period. And, you know, I've got their back. I'm there to keep them safe and hopefully make them or their character look good on the screen, doing things that they can never do. So for the most part, there's a lot of actors who are appreciative. They're very happy to hand over, and others less so. There's a few egos in the business, but more so, you know, they're appreciative, and it's a pleasure to get involved.
And it's funny because I have a background in film, and I don't think a lot of people realize just how many things need doubles. It's not always your big fire explosion stunt. Sometimes it's just a fall and learning how to fall the right way.
Yeah, expanding on that, the bulk of stunt work, you know, people look and think it's all glamour and every day is a huge car crash and a fireball and falling from a skyscraper. But the bread and butter work is just that, you know, it's a push backwards into a wall and falling to the ground. It's you know, pretending to be slapped. It's the artistry of selling a fight as if you're thumping each other hard when really you're placing a camera and you can't see the miss, and the acting part of that, of selling the hit and landing on the ground, that kind of thing. So yeah, the bread and butter day to day can be mundane, but we're keeping people safe and you know, making it all happen.
Can you feel, after 30 years in the business, can you feel a little of that wearing on your body at all?
Well, you sort of naturally drift into stunt coordination and directing, and you pick and choose the stunts as you get older. I'm 55. There's no way if somebody rang me to do a stair fall now or to lay a motorcycle down, I'll be hit by a car, you know. The last time I got hit by a car was when I was 45 and I was black and blue. Even though I did it perfectly, I was black and blue for about 4 days. Because your body just takes, you know, that deep bruising takes longer to heal the older you get. So the heart's willing, the mind's willing, but the body takes a little bit longer to heal. So you naturally back off and teach the younger generation how to do it. I still perform occasionally, although mainly I'm a life coach now. I do get coaxed out, and the new HBO Harry Potter is an example of that, being coaxed out to double one of the leads in that. So it's great fun getting dressed up again in the costume and doing stunts, you know, working in that.
That's incredible. Yeah, I just going through your IMDb photo gallery. I mean, there are pictures from you falling off of warships. I think I saw a photo that just said head-on collision. And I'm like, well, that's a story for sure. There's no way to come out of that without feeling some sort of taxation on your body after, you know, 30 years in the business. So yeah, like kudos to you for sticking with it for so long. You were also a 2-time Guinness World Record holder. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. I wanted to break a world record when I was 18, when I finally, this is definitely going to do it. I saw a documentary when I think I was about 17. I started parachuting at 16 years of age. At 17, I was getting higher and higher and starting to reach the limit in the UK of how high you could jump out of an aircraft, which got me to thinking, I wonder how high people have gone, you know, under canopy and flying, because I was a hang glider pilot at the same age, and I'd got my hang gliding pilot license at 17. And I just wanted to explore what would it be like to fly a canopy, open my parachute higher up and fly it like a hang glider, see how long I could stay up for. And that was how it was born as a naive 18-year-old. And it took another 13 years of hard graft to
Wow.
raise the monies, the sponsorship, learn how to use oxygen systems, because it turned
Jeez.
out I needed to be jumping from 30,000 feet above the earth in order
Yeah.
to have a fair go at that record. But
Wow.
yeah, I didn't give up. And at the age of 31, I broke that Guinness World Record for the longest parachute jump with a flight time of 45 minutes over a mountain
God.
range in Spain.
And I believe that was 5 minutes over the record
That's,
previously, right?
that's correct. Yeah.
Just an extra 5 minutes. Didn't need to go 30 seconds more, a whole 5 minutes. Probably safe to say that record's not being broken anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, and things have moved on, technology has changed. I was breaking a record there that had stood for many, many years, I think it had stood for about 40 years, because it was almost an accidental record in the US military, where a pilot flying around canopy had got trapped in thermals as they over the desert doing a test jump. And every time he tried to descend, the thermals would lift him higher, and he was stuck up there for like 40 minutes.
Wow.
So, but it was a challenge to break that, to keep a canopy where it's not going to stall and collapse. Because if you go too slow, it just collapses and stalls like an aircraft. And if you let your toggles off and fly the parachute normally, it would land way quicker than that. So it's a combination of altitude and flying it like a hang glider, really. But
Wow.
yeah, I always, it was great to get the extra 5 minutes. A short time later, I broke the Guinness World Record for the highest bungee jump, and that had been just over
Wow.
10,000 feet. And we managed to put an extra 5,000 feet on that as well. So that still hasn't been broken over 20 years later.
Most people have resolutions in a year that involve keeping up with their gym membership, intermittent fasting. Yours seems to take you to the sky. That's quite an unnatural proclivity for just jumping out of things. My resolution, which I feel foolish now, is to just lower body fat percentage. I could do that, or I could be like Curtis and jump out of an airplane. I
Yeah,
think that's
it's
probably a
a
much more
simple choice.
exciting goal.
No, well, I mean, I deal a lot with goals now with my clients as a life
Yeah.
coach, and that becomes a theme. There's usually a period of healing, and followed once they've healed and they've let things go and they're free again. They get excited about, okay, I'm over the things that were holding me back. What do I really want to do now? And we explore, because I'm looking at things like life purpose, and people have these little secrets that they don't share with people, that they once dreamt of something when they were younger, but they feel foolish discussing it. And I'm the man to say, no, I was the child who wanted to be a stuntman, who rode away to TV stations when I was 12 years old, which is the truth.
Yeah.
I rode away. And, I knew, I've got a diary where I knew, even at that age that I mentioned, by 18, I wanted to be a professional stuntman by the age of 25. I wanted to have been in a James Bond movie before the age of 30. And at the age of 30 or above, break a Guinness World Record. And so I just missed it. I qualified as a stuntman at 25, and started my first movie, James Bond movie, at the age of 26. And I then went on to break a Guinness World Record when I was 31, and my second one at 32. So some people could say, oh, you missed the boat, but hey, I became a stuntman, started the
Yeah.
Bond movie.
Absolutely.
And so, you put a time on it, you aim for that, but you give yourself permission to go a little bit over. The main thing is never, ever give up until you've achieved your dreams.
Now, that is actually a really good segue into really what this show is about. And so, most of our audience members are either artists or they're aspiring artists. They are trying in their own way to achieve their goals, maybe some that they've had since childhood, some that they have obtained recently, but there's not a good way for them to get there. Now, I want to focus more on the people who've had those dreams since childhood, like you. And it's always, in my opinion, important to focus on the genesis of that and how that progresses throughout. Because I would argue sometimes, I mean, there are so many variables that cause that dream to kind of be put on the back burner. But in your opinion, what are some of the things that cause people to kind of fall off from those dreams?
Yeah, I mean, when I sit opposite somebody like that and they say, let's be honest, they are excuses. Okay, it starts in the mind. I'd love to write a book, but I haven't got the time.
Yeah.
I'd really like to to write that book. I've got a book in me, but I don't know where to start.
Mm.
I started writing a book, but I have mouths to feed, a mortgage to pay. I haven't got the time to sit
Yeah.
and pen a book. I'm holding 3 jobs and so on. When you really press that and just patiently sit and listen, and you keep asking why. Okay, why is that? Why do you feel you need to do that? And then they explain, and why is that? Usually, literally 90% of the time, it comes down to a fear. So the fear of not being able to pay the bills, the fear of being judged, the fear of what will the neighbors say? What will, I had this like all through my early life, and to a certain degree, I still get it now. Every time I do something big or dream big, when I wanted to become a millionaire, make $1 million, I come from very poor backgrounds, and people laughed, and I've done that now, and they're not laughing anymore, and so but the same people laugh at other dreams. When I said I was going to write a book, even though at the time I'd already broken the world records and been in movies, and still people doubted me. Okay, so I do get that fear of people judge you, but a mindset shift is to ask, is that real? Well, is it true that you won't be able to pay your mortgage if you write that book? Like, of course not. Is it true that you haven't got the time? No, because you can make the time. So, prime example, you could say I didn't have the time. I was very, very busy when I wrote my first book, but it was so important for me to do that I realized the only window in a day was to rise early, because from 7 a.m. my day was just super busy, and it never let off really until I fell asleep tired at 11 p.m. But it needed to be done, so I thought, well, there's a window. I'll create a window at 6 a.m. and I'll still need some sleep. I've got to look after myself, self-preservation, my health, super important. Plus, I need to be in a clear, open-minded, heart-connected way for the book. I was writing a self-help book, so it needed to be authentic and it needed to flow. So I set about creating a pattern where I went to bed an hour early. I went to bed at 10 p.m. and I got up ready for 6 a.m. And it took a year, but the book was written and the book was published, and people still read that book because I decided to change the way I was thinking. It's like going from a scarcity mindset to an abundant mindset. It begins in the mind with that decision that, when it's bursting out of you, I don't know whether you felt the same, but you've got that book inside you, it's bursting to get out. Yeah. Once you create that way for it to escape, in my case, there was a little bit of a morning meditation and sitting down quietly, and then began to type, and it just flowed through me. But I had to allow that space. I had to create that sacred space for that to happen.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, you touched on something that I really want to focus on today, and that is when I was trying to figure out, so going from a professional stuntman where you were honored in the Hollywood Stuntman's Hall of Fame, going from there all the way over to life coach. This is a two-parter because when I was trying to figure out, I was trying to connect the dots, and in that impossible Venn diagram between the two careers, there was only one area where I could put something clearly in the middle, and that was between the two, what they share in common is, in my opinion, a complete realignment of fear. And so what made you decide to make that change from stuntman to life coach? And also, did being a stuntman support or catalyze that transition in careers? Because I would think that if you had to face your fears, or you had to learn how to live with your fears and support your fears in different ways as a stuntman, I would imagine that would transition pretty nicely into life coaching.
Yeah, that's very astute of you to notice that. A lot of people miss the link. I mean, they are chasms apart, and one of the links on a Venn diagram would be dealing with fear, and that would be something that I've learned over the years. And to answer the question properly, we have to go back to me being that child that I mentioned that was writing away to the TV stations, because the reason I wanted to be a stuntman, bearing in mind, and please forgive me because I was a 12-year-old, right?
Nope. Go right
ahead. The
only
reason I wanted to be a stuntman was because I watched a TV show called The Fall Guy that was there in the early 80s. Lee Majors was playing Colt Seavers every Friday night in our home. And I just thought, that's amazing. He lived in LA,
Mhm.
Hollywood. I lived in a very grey part of England, industrial town with
Mm.
chimneys belching smoke and poverty and, low income families.
Mm.
And the dream of being somewhere sunny and visiting Hollywood, doing these stunts. I wasn't a sporty child at all. All right. And it's contrary to what you think, because actually stuntmen are kind of elite sportsmen, like very, very highly qualified in multiple sports. So
Mhm.
you're not just a martial artist, you're like a second or third Dan instructor, maybe. And you're not just a parachutist, you're actually a skydiving instructor and a display parachutist. And you need, in the
Okay.
UK, at least 6 of these skills to instruct a standard.
Mm.
So when I found this out as a 12-year-old, my heart sank, because I was the geeky kid who wasn't very good at sport, 2 left feet,
Yeah.
uncoordinated. But where I used to fit in, which every kid wants to do, was when it required courage of some sort. So
Mhm.
climbing that tree, swinging from that rope and letting go and dropping into the river, or jumping over that
Gotcha.
stream. We used
Okay.
to call it playing dares, a game of dares. And I would usually win. I would just, I've got a stubborn streak that I've developed and turned into tenacity as an adult. But as a
Mhm.
child, I had that stubborn streak to never ever give up until I'd won that kind of game. So I would go higher still
Gotcha.
until it was down to the last 2. And then I
Mhm.
would just do it. And the other guy would refuse and shake hands. So that was the origin of this. Now, the reality was I was a nerd, and I was more comfortable at my local library. I loved reading books.
Mhm.
You see behind me, I've still kept a lot of those books, self-help books and unusual books, every kind of genre, the paranormal, the mysterious.
Yeah.
I was just drawn into so much, kind of escapism into, I love books, and I still do.
Mhm.
One of these people who opens a book and smells it and,
Love it.
gets comfortable with a
Absolutely
warm
love it.
drink.
Can't get enough.
I love reading. Yeah.
Yep.
So that was the real me. Okay. And then jump forward a decade, and I've had to turn myself into a tough guy. I've had
Mhm.
to, because I got straight into it at 12 when they told me I needed all these skills. Even though I was a geeky kid, I started running. I
Mhm.
did my first few half marathons as a 13 and
Wow.
14-year-old. I started boxing at 15 and 16, skydiving at 16. So I got straight into it,
Mhm.
but just very sporadically, because I was at school and, I was pressured quite rightly from my parents to focus on my education.
Mhm.
But at 18, when I'd done all of that and landed a job, I thought, no, I'm going to go all out to become a stuntman. And so I became a
Wow.
professional actor, went to acting school, because that was one of the skills needed.
Mhm.
Now, I became somebody actually that I wasn't, and I only discovered this, many years later, say in my 30s, when you start to ask those broader questions, the meaning of life, my placement in it, my purpose,
Mhm.
starting to think of those things. People often in their mid 30s to early 40s start to ponder. They've got married, maybe they've got a mortgage and children now, and they're
Mhm.
starting to, ponder their life's decisions. Did they choose the right career? Is this really them?
Right.
And what had happened to me is, you alluded to that sense of fear. People kept asking me what it was, how this geeky kid ended up becoming a professional stuntman, winning awards. How did I break those world records? And I never really knew how to answer them.
Mhm.
So I did some sort of kind of soul searching, and I stumbled across basically mindset and the power of the mind in creating your outside world. Because everything that around all of us right now, if it's things we bought, we had to think of it first in order to go out and seek it and buy it. So everything from the clothes we wear to the house we're in to the car we drive, we first formed that thought in our mind.
Mhm.
And so that was a rabbit hole I went down, and I don't do anything by halves. I went away and I studied NLP and did the diploma. Then I qualified as an NLP practitioner. And then I
Okay.
started doing all of this training. This is why I was still a stuntman. And that felt much more resonant with me. It kind of really resonated, and it connected, because I was becoming a much more gentle person.
Okay.
And what happened is I started to live 2 lives.
Mhm.
One was the regular stunt career, and the other was I wrote my book. I got invited to start doing talks, and
Mhm.
my old form teacher invited me back to my old school, the school I left at
Wow.
16, and it was great. I went on the stage
Yeah.
and I spoke to people at the same age where I was writing these things in the diary, and writing off to TV companies. And the message was that anything's possible. That story I just told, because it's true. I could look them in the eyes and say, when I was your age, don't laugh, but I wanted to be a stuntman. Because they didn't know at this point I was a stuntman. So they started giggling, and I said, I know, I had the same thing. My parents laughed at me and my friends laughed at me. But yeah, I'm just being honest. I wanted to be a stuntman. I wanted to be in a James Bond film. And I wanted to break a world record leaping out of a hot air balloon above the atmosphere. And people are starting to eye roll, get a bit restless in the audience. I said, anyway, I didn't let people laughing at me put me off. And this is what happened. And the lights dim, run VT, and then they see me as a stuntman. They see me fighting James Bond on the silver screen. They
Just
see me climbing out of a
turned it around on them.
Yeah, exactly that. So the lights come up. And there's silence, and you can hear a pin drop, and they're all leaning in, hanging on to my every word, and it's beautiful. And I actually felt, I'm not embarrassed to share it with you. I actually felt really emotional when I was talking. I'm talking from the heart, and I'm giving something back, and it felt so real and aligned with, this is what I should be doing more of. I was already like helping out with charities and things, but there's a way of giving of my time to help people that just really, I'd written the book to help people, and now I could speak to a whole room at the same time and help them. And about a week later, I was called on set back in with my stuntman hat on and my radio clipped in on a film set somewhere. And I was called in to look after the safety of a rape scene, basically. It was a historic sex case, like the Me Too movement. It was a reconstruction based on real life. So it was a retro thing. It was set in the 70s. And, closed set, and my job's there to try and keep everybody safe and find this is way before you had intimacy coordinators involved. So you do your best to, you're going for authenticity, but, trying to make light of it a little bit to people feel uncomfortable. And it was horrible. It was a grim afternoon's work. And when I was driving home that night, it really struck me how the difference between when my heart was racing and I felt moved close to tears, felt in a beautiful place, to this heavy, dark cloud that was following me home, having portrayed a scene like that. And I thought, without getting too deep, that's my contribution in the world today. I've created this violent sex scene for this, it was meant to be terrible, and it's only a small part of the TV show. And people have said since, it's just entertainment. Come on, people, you're helping people relax after a hard day's work. They put that on, they lose themselves in the story. And I said, I know, I get that. But I'd much rather be doing a comedy and making people laugh. And that was the decision that this isn't right for me. How can I be going out helping people and be, really connected from the heart to make a difference in people's lives, and then be going away in this toxic environment on a film set? As lovely as that seems and exciting, and I've traveled the world and I've had some great adventures, but there comes a time where you've got to stand tall in your authenticity and be yourself, and since I've done that, my life's just become even more blessed in many, many ways.
And it's funny that you mentioned feeling emotional. I just listening to that story, I got emotional, because if I was in that situation and somebody came up and said that they wanted to be a stuntman and then they showed that clip, you would in that room be that shining beacon of possibility. And it's interesting that the room laughed. Can you speak a little bit more on that? What do you think was going through their mind when they laughed? Because in my mind, there's this mass consensus that what dreams we have in our childhood will not come true until they're shown somebody like you who proves to them, no, if you do it right, you can still achieve them. And that would be incredibly harrowing for me to endure.
It was, I think they left, I think they felt uncomfortable. These would be 15 and 16-year-olds. I think they felt embarrassed for me because they were just embarrassed, because part of the reason I was there to try and inspire these students was because there was no jobs for these people, or that was the perception. There was no work for these people when they left school. There was a very high rate of teenage pregnancy.
Gotcha.
While they were at school, 15 and 16. In some cases encouraged by the parents that had gone through that and lived on benefits, stake system handouts. And the guys, there's a lot of drug dealing going on. It's just a very low vibrational state of affairs, fed up, high unemployment, people pacing up and down, getting their state benefits. And I was there to show them there's a different way, And also, it's not coming from a place of boasting or showing off. I was very quick to
Yeah.
begin the talk by pointing out how geeky I was. And I even showed a picture of me in the school uniform, this lanky kid, who was kind of soft-hearted, like the real me. You spent a lot of time. I was more likely to be in my bedroom at home, looking down a microscope or looking through a telescope, reading a book and learning things and watching TV shows than I
Yeah.
was out and about. I did get out and about, and but I didn't play soccer or cricket or anything like that. And I wasn't very sporty. I didn't hang around with the popular kids, so I was a little bit introverted. Still am an introvert. You just learn different tools. That's a sense of fear as well that you overcome. So yeah, they were laughing because they were embarrassed, because back home, if they said they wanted to be a stuntman, their parents would class that as the same as, oh, I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. I want to be a firefighter. And people just rolled their eyes, and they come from an environment where they didn't think anything was possible. And, that's why silence fell, and you could hear the cogs turning in their mind.
Yeah.
It's like, no way. How's he done that? And which I then went on to explain.
Yeah. Do you think it's a headwind that they face? Because they're probably thinking about what they would have to do in order to make that happen for themselves. And, whether it's not, like you said, it's the lack of parental support, maybe the lack of societal support. I've done countless studies on Mozart and child prodigies, and they say the reason why it's dying is because to have a child prodigy, you not only have to have the talent, but you have to recognize the talent and a community that supports that talent and opportunities to allow that talent to flourish and grow. Is it harder for people to imagine something like that just because of the environment that they're put in?
Oh, I think it's 100% possible for anybody to, and I say this from a genuine place. There may be people listening today, eye rolling, because let me be clear, I'm not coming from that place which has become popular since I became an adult. Certainly in the last 20 years, through shows, America's Got Talent, the X Factor in the UK, The Voice, and it's sometimes bandied around like a bumper sticker. You can be or do anything you want in life, and with that, there are people who don't have a talent who, are pushed forward as if you could be a famous singer, and they have a mediocre talent, so it can go too far the other way. But from a genuine place where somebody's got a natural talent, then, it's difficult, isn't it? In a perfect world, you would be supported by the parents to spot that. That's the first step, isn't it? I could write as a child. That was my only, going back to childhood, the natural thing. Some people are really good mathematicians. Some people can write. Some people are more sport orientated. The thing that I always found effortless was creative writing. I used to enjoy it when it was that time at school. At a young age, I could write stories to lose myself and write a story. It was effortless. And in a greetings card, I could always kind of just come up with a poem, like within a few seconds, or a rhyme, or I could write the person's name down the side of the card, and then a letter, pick that as the beginning of a sentence. Whatever that is, that was like a natural gift. I still find it effortless to write, and thank goodness. So this is why I work as a life coach with getting aligned and living in your genuine alignment. Because when you're in that place, it's effortless. When I wrote that book at that 6 a.m., there were many days where it just flowed, and it's only on review the next morning that I thought, gosh, that's not bad at all. What I wrote the day before, it just flowed, and my fingers were on fire on the keyboard.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was only looking back, some months it was kind of writing itself, plugging into that inspiration and just being connected like that. And then it flowed, that creative element. It was incredible. So, yeah, I think I genuinely believe that. But if you play to your strengths as well, you've got some natural God-given talents, identifying what those are, usually by asking somebody, when are they in flow? When is it effortless? When are they called by a spouse or partner for their food, and they're in the middle of something, they almost don't want to go because they're so enraptured with what they're doing? That thing, whatever that is, that you so love, you would do it if you won the lottery tomorrow. You'd keep doing it. That thing. How can you monetize and make a career and bring all your talents together in that vein? And then the sky's the limit. You really can be able to do anything when you're in alignment.
Yeah. And that is really the big key here is taking everything that you've learned prior and being able to apply it towards your next career goal. And that is something that gets a lot of people hung up, is that going from something like a stuntman to a life coach, how do you thread that needle? Was there anything that you were able to apply here that made it a little bit more effortless than, I would say, than say somebody else who was just looking to become a life coach who didn't have that experience? Was there anything unique to being a stuntman and a stunt coordinator that made the transition into life coach easier?
Yeah, in many ways, I'd been coaching for years because, before I was a stuntman, I used to be a fencing coach.
Oh, wow.
Sword fencing was one of my skills. So I actually qualified as a fencing instructor at the age of 19 and used to teach. I was the instructor for the local university then. So that's where I'd got out of my shyness. Like I say, real life, I'm an introvert and I still am. But you pick up the skills to, run the class, get out the side, and it just happens. So I've been coaching in a way all my life, as a stuntman, developing into directing, then when you're directing actors that you're coaching. If I'm helping an actor stand on a cliff, I've got a safety line or safety lines on them, and I know they've got a fear of heights. There's a gentle persuasion going on from a good place. There's these different tactics that I'd learned offset, like NLP, to bypass their fears and communicate without them really realizing I'm talking to their subconscious mind in the language that I use, the way I reframe things. And in the wrong hands, that can be manipulative. But when it comes from a good place, in this case, gradually inching towards the edge of a cliff, showing that they're really safe. And actually, it's not too bad. It is absolutely safe, and you could hang a truck off this line and you've got two of them on you, and you've got a really good team here, and nothing is going to happen. And even if it did, look, we've got safety below you as well. So it looks dangerous. It isn't. It's as safe as houses. So in that way, and many other ways working with actors over the years, that's a form of coaching, listening to their objectives or objections and seeing what it is, where that comes from. And it is usually in the stunt profession coming from some form of fear. So that's what I took. That was one of the things in my toolkit to take with me, was the talent for listening, connecting, making a genuine connection. A lot of people have a conversation and they're waiting for their turn to talk, bring it back to them. We all love to talk about ourselves, right? But the art of listening and really listening and connecting, and then a genuine desire to help that person. And in a certain way where they feel like they came up with the idea, so that you can then say, that's brilliant, that's superb, yeah, let's go with that. So, but really you're kind of working with them and leading them very gently back onto their path. So dealing with fear, the ability to speak and communicate, they were great coming over. And I picked a lot of that up from the NLP studies I've been doing. I do a thing called EFT, which is emotional freedom technique. And I'd worked with people with fears before, stunt people and actors in dealing with them fears. And that's a way of energetically releasing old emotions. So I was able to take that with me and use that in my coaching as well. And that's both of those modalities are part of what I now offer clients as a life coach.
Do you view fear more as a foe or a friend when guiding people?
A friend. I mean, it's that there are different levels of fear. You've got that very old part of the back part of your brain, called the reptilian center of the brain. That's to do with fight or flight. So that's been with us for many, many thousands of years. So, massive spike in chemicals, in the brain, the bloodstream, the heart rate increases, the adrenaline flows. And oftentimes that's there as a preservation it's a good thing, in a situation where it is needed. So you're about to jump out of an aeroplane, as I've done nearly 1,000 times. That's a good thing to course through your veins to absolutely focus in the moment, bring all of your attention. You're absolutely focused on the step. Second you leap out of that aircraft, it's pure peace and relaxation, because it's just concentration. And that's been the same for hundreds of stunts over the years, where you need to absolutely focus. Now, if that was a job interview, and my brain is reacting like there's a saber-toothed tiger chasing me, it's overkill. It doesn't
Yeah.
know the difference. It knows your heart's racing. It knows you perceive a threat. So a little bit of that's all right to
Mhm.
sharpen, but if you're shaking and you've got sweaty palms,
Mhm.
and so that's where you need to dial it back. And you can use things like breath work,
Mhm.
certain ways of breathing, as silly as it sounds.
Mhm.
If you breathe in and out through the mouth and you change that to breathing in through the nose and out through that alone can start to change your body
Mhm.
chemistry. If you breathe in through the nose, hold it for a few seconds, then breathe out through the mouth, that resets. You're starting to affect your nervous system there.
Mhm.
And again, these are all things that were transferable. If as an actor, we learn about how to breathe, right? How
Mhm.
to intercostal diaphragmatic breathing is a fancy name for taking a big old breath and inflating from the lower belly, then
Mhm.
mid, then into the lungs, so you can do Shakespeare and deliver
Mhm.
really long lines.
Yep.
And get in control of your breath. Well, that's the same breathing, that intercostal diaphragmatic breathing, that I teach and use in meditation
Mhm.
and to reset the nervous system with clients. And so fear is your friend as an indicator. And then sometimes when it's the sort of fear that's holding you back, as we
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, the fear of judgment,
Mhm.
fear of, where you start to procrastinate. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's great. I'll start that book next month. Let me just
Mhm.
get this out of the way. And if you've got somebody in your corner, that's a real help. If you've got an accountability partner,
Mhm.
whether that's a parent or your best friend or a sibling, whoever that is,
Mhm.
to hold you accountable. Bite the bullet and tell them that you have in reservations. You really want, you still haven't started the book. Get somebody to actually hold you accountable. And
Yeah.
that's a little tip to guilt trip you into acknowledging that you are procrastinating. We can all busy procrastinate and put things off. But
Right.
once you actually start the process, it becomes enjoyable. It'll have its
Yeah.
challenges. There'll be off days. There'll be days
Mhm.
where things dry up. There'll be
Mhm.
days where you want to do more than an hour. You could spend the whole
Mhm.
day locked up
Mhm.
writing. But the whole process, as you know,
Yeah.
exceptionally rewarding after it's published.
Yeah. In my screenwriting, one theme that I always love going back to is what happens when people put themselves into their own societal prisons, their own mental prisons that they've just built up all these walls around themselves. And one thing that always comes back are the labels that either they put on themselves or society does. And if I could recommend anything to you, Eric Delgado has a show, a one-man show he did on off Broadway called In and of Itself. It's on Hulu. He's a magician, but he challenges societal norms and how we bob and weave to kind of mold ourselves into these nice, neat little norms. We define ourselves by our jobs, but we're so much more. And it's so much deeper than just being labeled as an introvert or an accountant. And, we are somebody's daughter, somebody's mother. But people are so scared to either break out of those or they just want so desperately to be called by a certain set of other norms. And I find that really handicapping in somebody's artistic and creative process. So, do you work with any of your clients on reshaping how they define themselves? Because it
Oh
is a
yeah,
really, really, really heavy ball and chain on their leg in order to grow.
yeah. It's funny, isn't it? You're right. We do have those labels, and oftentimes we readily accept them
Hmm.
because it brings you into your comfort zone.
Hmm.
We all want to fit in at some point. Going back to me as that child,
Hmm.
jumping off trees and
Yeah.
jumping over streams to
Hmm.
try and fit in. You do anything because we want to be accepted. Deep down, we all
Hmm.
want to be loved. There's universal human traits.
Yeah.
Everyone loves a hug. We all want to be loved.
Yeah.
And, it comes down to the desire to be loved and accepted
Hmm.
beyond the roof over your head and food in your cupboards. And just
Yeah.
the needs are quite basic, really.
Mm.
We all, beyond the big mansions and
Mhm.
the fancy cars and the exotic
Mhm.
holidays.
Yeah.
And that basic desire to be accepted and loved keeps us sometimes in a prison because,
Mhm.
like you say, you can have that label.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm an accountant. And if you are an accountant, you're good at it, and then you don't step out of that realm, then you're in your comfort zone. And this is something that I speak a lot of. I wrote about it in my book, actually, and it's part of the coaching I do now,
Mhm.
is when you take on that label, if you, in your mind's eye, draw a circle and put a line from, like, if it was a clock face, it would be from 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock.
Mhm.
Just imagine that now. below the line, that's your subconscious. That's running the label of accountant, say, that you mentioned. And above that line, that's your conscious. That's who you consciously know you are. You're an accountant, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Below the line, your subconscious, that's like a program running away. It's very happy. Now, when you introduce a new idea, you know, I've been an amateur actor. I've been doing amateur dramatics. Nobody really knew. I don't tell my accountant friends this, but I've got an opportunity to go on Broadway, but I have to give up the accountancy job.
Mm-hmm.
And they start to form the thought above that line in their conscious mind about being an actor on Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
Could I do it? Could I am I giving it all up? And all them worries kick in. Now, the fact that the image above the line is different to the image below the line, it's an incongruence.
Mm-hmm.
And this causes literally shaking, nausea, sleepless nights.
Yeah.
I call it the wobble zone in my
Yeah.
books, because the easiest thing in the world is to convince yourself that was a silly idea and step backwards to being an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
And when you replace that image above the line of an accountant, everything goes calm, and you convince yourself it wouldn't have worked anyway. What was I thinking?
Yeah.
I'll politely decline that, because you're in your comfort zone. You want to get back into that label because
Mm-hmm.
it was safe there. What people don't realize, and I teach these different tips and tricks, is that if you hold that thought and you engage in that thought, like really engage all of your senses, you sit quietly and you mentally rehearse the lines, you see yourself on that stage, you look down and you can feel the fabric of the costume on that stage, smell the makeup and the everything. You bring in all of the senses. When you do that every day for a minimum of 30 days, the image below the line in the subconscious turns from accountant to actor in this example.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have cognitive resonance. They're both the same.
Mm-hmm.
And automatically you get up one day, there isn't any jitters or nerves. You're sleeping at night again. And that very quickly will become your new reality. And so that's something that I worked out years ago. And I discovered that when people kept asking me, what is it about? What did you do different to other people against the odds to become a world record breaker or to do this and to do that? And some of these techniques, visualization, mental rehearsal, these, going back to your earlier question, again, more skills that I can bring from the unlikely world of stunts and film and television into the coaching arena, because that's what we do. We mentally rehearse stunts. As skydivers, they call it a dirt dive. You lay on the floor on these like little skateboard things and you link up and you practice and rehearse the movements.
Okay.
And then you stand on your feet with your eyes closed and you mentally rehearse. You pretend you're falling to the ground at 120 miles an hour while you're on the ground rehearsing the maneuvers. Mental rehearsal is so important. What people don't realize is that it's rewiring your brain as well. You've got this plasticity in the brain, and the neural networks fire the same. And this has been proven time and time again. Having somebody rehearse a basketball shot with monitors on their head, monitoring brain activity, when they physically practice that at the basketball court, it fires the exact same neurons as the person mentally rehearsing and going through that with his eyes closed, sitting down. And they've exhaustively tested this. And the person who did that every day for 30 days, taking the perfect shot, was more consistent at doing that than the guy who'd practiced every few days on the court in real life. And he hadn't physically practiced, he'd just mentally rehearsed. So mental rehearsal, and that's where it's about. To break out of those labels, you just need to keep going when you've got that feeling of dread, knowing the easiest thing to do is to step back into your comfort zone.
And is there any advice for somebody who is just unwilling to give up just how much they want to be accepted? Because when I talk to plenty of actors, they'll have a side job, whether it's customer service or waiting job, and I'll say, "Oh, are you an actor?" Like, "Yes," with waiting on the side, or "Oh, so you're a waiter." They'll always say, "Yes, but," and I was like, "You don't have to convince me. You're an actor either way." But in their mind, it's such a crucial thing to clarify to people to know that they are more than just one thing. And it seems to me, for true success here, you almost have to be self-sustaining, regardless of what labels people put on you.
Yeah, it's about turning your attention from what's outside. It might seem a little cliched, but turning your attention from what's outside of you, what people are saying, because really they're probably not. Most people aren't that interested. They're more interested in themselves. We just conjure this up in our heads oftentimes and build it up to
Yeah.
be something it's not,
Yeah.
in my experience and hundreds of clients' experience.
Yeah.
By turning that attention from the outside to within,
Mm-hmm.
life changes dramatically, you know. Why are you thinking that? Why do you need to be seen? In my case, I don't mind sharing, what drove me through my 20s was a desire to be seen by my father. You know, as corny as that is,
No.
you know, when I was 30 years old, going up in hot air balloons, really, I was an 8-year-old boy who wanted to be seen by his father, you know, and to be recognized. And I realized in later life, he just had a different way of showing that he was proud, you know, and accepting that I was good enough, you know, without needing that external validation that I am good enough. And I know that in heaps now.
Yeah.
So turn your attention from what's outside, start to look within, because, you know, you don't need that. You are good enough. If you work, you're not less of an actor if you're waiting tables, waiting on your big break. And in the meantime, embrace it. Don't live in the future. Like one day I'll be discovered. I'll have my own TV show. Just enjoy what it is now. You've got that little gig coming up, or you're doing that audition. That was fun. You met some people there. You're doing that little improv thing you do on a Thursday night. Because you look back one day, as I did when I gave the acting up, and you'll miss those things, you know. When I had no money at all, and I was doing kind of semi-professional show, I did all sorts, you know, to make a living. I was doing TV, then the jobs would dry up and I'd go back and do some theatre. I do some corporate gigs, thinking, guys, come to this. I'm traveling the country doing this corporate thing. And then you look back years later, I loved that, the adventure of it and the challenge of it. It's great. So just get more into the moment, which is another thing that I'm into, mindfulness. A lot of actors, a lot of writers live in the future, waiting for that day, waiting for that book to be written, waiting to land that role. And their life passes them by, you know. When you start to embrace the present a couple of times a day, every day I stop. When people are new to it, you can set an alarm, you know, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock. It goes off, a little mindfulness reminder, and you just stop and look around you and think, this is great. And a boring day sat in an office at home can turn into, you know what, I've got a hot drink next to me. I've got a woman I love downstairs who's going to shout me down soon for a bite to eat. Love her to bits. The rain's lashing at the windows. I'm in England. And the heating's on and I'm cozy. You know what? This is good. I'm doing something I enjoy. I'm finishing this article I'm writing, and life is good. And you feel gratitude, and in a cosmic way that sends out those waves of gratitude, which eventually reflect back at you. But it's just, you know, improves your mental health. You're in a good place. You do that a couple of times a day, every day. You're a completely different person than that desperate kind of. And it shows at auditions. You know, you're not holding too tightly. You know you're good enough. And you're there to, this is what I can bring to the role. And if this is what you're looking for, here I am. And I'm adaptable. Tell me what you want and I'll give you that, you know, come from a better place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I very much appreciate you sharing that. Now, that kind of leads into the next question, which was, if you knew then what you know now, would your stunt career look any different?
Golden question. It's tricky because it's one of those things in life where I want to say, yes, I wouldn't have done any of it the same because I made so many mistakes. I arrived on the scene with a chip on my shoulder that, you know, I can say that now because I live a life away from ego, which is, as you'll appreciate, like a massive change from the film set and the world of acting, right? It's huge egos. It's an egocentric place. But yeah, looking back, in a way, it was my ego getting in the way, in that I wouldn't network. Like I saw people, you know, kissing ass, as I would think at the time, you know, you know, whining and dining producers and casting directors.
In Hollywood? No.
In England as well. It's worldwide. I've worked all over the world. It's prolific all over the world. And that just isn't me, which is interesting because I guess something that's unique to me is that there's always, my whole life, been a desire to be real and authentic. It's just, you know, I didn't learn how to do it until, you know, middle age, to fully embrace it and have the courage to let go and just absolutely step out and say, look, this is me. and nobody cared. I demonized it. What are people going to say from my tough filming world when I confess to being an author and helping people and being someone who's into meditation and who lights candles and meditates in the morning before work? And it's like coming out of the closet, but like a spiritual closet.
Yeah.
And I built this up in my mind, stepped out, nobody even noticed. Same for my book. Like, no,
Yeah.
they just care about themselves mainly. No one cared. It was anticlimactic. Like, oh, I could have done this years ago.
Yeah.
So there's loads of things I would do different, and ... But going through all the mistakes that I've made has led me, warts and all, to be the person I am now. And I'm very, very comfortable in my skin now.
Yeah.
So I have been to some very, very low points that if I had a time machine and I could go back and whisper and advise my younger self, I could avoid those. I went through a patch of suicidal depression. I've gone through divorce. I've gone through bankruptcy. I've gone through making millions and losing millions. And I've gone through to hell and back in many, many ways. But I found the way out of that using the same techniques we've spoken about, in this chat, and corrected all of those things. I've married the love of my life, my soulmate. I'm very happily married. I've made the money back. I've made millions since then. And, I know how to deal and nurture my mental health and look after that and respect it and not be embarrassed to talk to people and share my feelings and my thoughts, become much more of a heart-centered, more rounded human being. I've dropped all of those masks. I used to have masks an armor really to survive in this tough world. I need to be a tough guy. And if anybody looks at me across the street, I need to give off this vibe that don't even come near me. And so I used to use these things to survive in a tough world growing up. Whereas now I just stand tall in my authenticity. I can be tough. I'm still a trained martial artist.
Yeah.
I've still got technique, but I just choose to smile and be loving and to walk away because I've got no ego. I don't want any trouble. And these people acting that way are damaged goods. They've got their own demons, and there'll be a reason that they're acting that way. And you can come from a place of love and help and support even in those extreme situations. So I wouldn't change anything, to answer your question, based on the fact that it would change who I am now. And I'm in a good position to help others because I've been through it.
Yeah. A couple final questions. And you alluded to this in the beginning, and I would argue this is probably the most important. So you mentioned you had a goal of being in a James Bond film. That was one goal that you achieved. So what was it like being killed by Pierce Brosnan?
It sounds strange to say it was great, doesn't it? Like being killed. But it was... I got asked to do the film, and I couldn't sleep for excitement. And I'd seen it was largely shot at Pinewood Studios, just outside of London in England. And it's so iconic because I'd wanted to be a stuntman all my life, since childhood. I used to watch all these behind the scenes, the making of. I used to buy the books to go and see a movie, Indiana Jones, Superman, whatever it might be, and then go and buy the book, the making of. And so this place, Pinewood Studios, kept popping up. And finally, I got the phone call. Okay, we'll see you at 6 a.m. at Pinewood Studios. Here's the address. And it's like, gosh, it's happening. I can't wait. But I kind of thought I'd be deep background. And immediately I'm given a machine gun and asked to hang out of a car during the car chase. And we want you to shoot. You're chasing James Bond around this multi-story car park. You're kidding. Like, okay. Absolutely loving it, leaning out of this car, firing this machine gun. And you're kind of getting paid excellent money to do something. It was like playing. A lot of stunt guys and actors were playing and being paid for it, to a degree.
It's a real shame you didn't just slip a line in there.
Yeah, exactly. So I did that. And then because the magic of cinema, they can pull soft focus on me in the background, firing the machine gun, then reuse me because there was like 5 stunt guys there and they had to turn it to 20 bad guys. Yeah. So the next minute I was given a rocket launcher. Okay, what am I doing with this? We want you to step out and fire a rocket launcher at James Bond. Really? Yeah. It's all pretend, but we're going to put a fishing line from there. It's going to go through this car and it's going to blow your associates up behind. And for real, I had to kind of stand there with lactic acid building up in my legs because I had to hold this awkward position for like a couple of minutes, trying not to shake and lose face, like horse riding stance, holding this rocket launcher. And then the stunt guys all gelled up to take a fireball. They came behind the car, the James Bond car, this silver BMW, and 3, 2, 1. Rocket came out of my RPG through their windscreen, and
Oh my
huge. I felt the
God.
heat from where I was. Big fireball. I had to jump out of the way, like cartwheel out of the
Gee.
way, and we got it in one. And it's fascinating. And that then led on to being on screen with peers, playing a guard in the South China Seas. The door opens up, and I step out, and he stabs me in the chest. And he dresses me up as him. He puts the backpack on me, puts his hat on me, and all the while, every now and again, he'll
That's
poke
the
out
one I
American
saw.
finger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we go. So when I saw the film, there's me in a James Bond film, and they even mentioned me. The bad guy Stamper looks over, and you see me floating to the bottom. He's dead. We've killed Bond. And then Bond creeps off, and it's like, they think that was me. I've just been on the screen. I was the 12-year-old again, smiling from ear to ear,
Right.
loving every minute of it. So yeah, fantastic experience.
Yeah, absolutely. We're almost out of time here. So last one, what we always like to do is we take the people who come on, love their wealth of knowledge and their inspiration. You're an avid reader yourself. I'm sure you've recommended tons of things. Give a recommendation to the audience. What are you watching? What are you reading? What are you listening to? Something for them to chew on.
Ooh, I am into it's probably an answer a lot of people are giving now, but I'm really into Diary of a CEO at the minute.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
are you familiar with that?
Vaguely, but definitely pretty popular now.
Yeah, it's just something I stumbled across, listened to, and then watched the next one. It's become like a regular. I don't watch a lot of fiction these days, so I'm more drawn to documentaries, and I'm a lifelong learner, so the books I read, tend to be, personal development books. So I'll still do that and learn new things. But yeah, Diary of a CEO is my current thing that I watch every day, basically.
Are you a binge watcher, or have you managed to get a hold of that?
I've got a hold of it. I'm quite strict with myself, but I'm a
Good for
human being,
you.
so I know I've not got to, like, particularly on a Saturday evening, if I gift myself a bit more sleep on a Sunday morning, then I could stay up a little bit later and catch a few episodes. But yeah, definitely put a timer on things. I put a sleep timer. I watch that in bed of an evening.
Good.
And
Good.
watch that sleep timer on so it goes off and I know what time it is.
My dad equated it to taking a vintage Pinot Noir and just shotgunning it.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
All right. Thank you so much, Curtis. Guys, I think we're out of time here. Thank you so much, Curtis, for coming on and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. Where can people find you?
I'm across all the socials, or they can just find me at curtisrivers.com.
And we'll leave all those links down below for you guys to check out. Guys, I thank you so much, Curtis, for coming on. It's been a great time having to chat with you. Thank you guys for listening, and stay tuned for the next one.
Thank you.